George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
I told you so. I told you on Sunday we were on the brink of all-out war in the Middle East. Well, we sure are now. After the events in Beirut, in Syria, in Damascus, and then in the Iranian capital, Tehran, we are now waiting the response. And the response may not be swift, but it will be terrible. And the Iranian government has just accused the United States of America of co-responsibility for the heinous attack on the chief Palestinian negotiator, Ismail Haniyeh, in the Iranian capital, Tehran. They say that such an event could not have taken place without the permission and the cooperation of United States military resources. So the response when it comes might not just be upon Israel. And is the BBC a nest of institutionalized pedophilia? You'd be forgiven for thinking so. Their highest paid employee, to whom they gave a £40,000 a year rise on his record salary just a few months ago, pleads guilty to making indecent images of children. After the Jimmy Savile affair and many, many others, is the BBC fit to be the state mouthpiece of Britain? Actually, scratch that. The BBC is entirely fit to be the mouthpiece of this rotten, decaying state where people are running around with machetes, where people are murdering children in Taylor Swift concerts, and where nobody seems to know who is responsible for our borders or our policing. It is a hell of a mess, this broken Britain. The only consolation, if consolation it is that broken USA is a whole lot worse. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. It is the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
The body of Fuad Shukr, the number 2 man in the Hezbollah resistance movement in Lebanon, has been located in the rubble of the block of flats in Dahia, which were attacked by Benjamin Netanyahu 48 hours ago. 2 children and 2 women were murdered in the attack. Shukr and his bodyguard are 2 additional fatalities. More than 60 people were wounded in an area I know well, where I have former in-laws living, a tightly packed urban setting in which high flats can collapse like pancakes when hit by military ordnance. And that is exactly what happened. The number 2 man in Hezbollah, at least titularly number 2, but as another slain military political commander, Ismail Haniyeh, said just a day or 2 ago to the Iranian leader, when leaders fall, other leaders rise up to take their place. Hezbollah will be shocked and horrified at what has happened to Shukr, but it will not be weakened by it. If anything, all the experience shows that murdering leaders of resistance movements doesn't weaken them, but strengthens them. The question is, what happens now? Israel didn't just bomb Beirut, they also bombed Damascus, and crucially, for the narrative this evening, they also bombed Tehran and they killed the aforementioned Ismail Haniyeh, for the last 10 months the chief negotiator on the Palestinian side for the exchange of prisoners and for the conclusion of a ceasefire deal. If there's anyone out there, especially in the British government, who any longer harbours the illusion that Israel is in any way interested in getting its so-called hostages back and is interested in any way in bringing to an end a conflict which has killed and wounded hundreds of thousands of people in 10 months in a concentration camp just a few miles long and a few miles deep. If there's anyone out there who thinks Israel, Netanyahu, is interested in peace, they are not paying attention. The truth is, everybody knows, actually, that they are not interested in peace. They don't give a damn about hostages or freeing them. They are interested only in the extirpation, the annihilation of the Palestinian people. And they have killed Hamas leader after leader after leader. And this one will be no different. Except I've met him. Along with, actually, my Labour MP predecessor, the late and lamented Tony Lloyd, who also met with Ismail Haniyeh. I met him when I took a siege-breaking convoy into Gaza in 2009. That's right, it all started on October the 7th of last year. But in 2009, I had to lead a convoy of British citizens to break the siege on Gaza. Haniyeh wanted to award me a Palestinian passport as a mark of gratitude and recognition for the efforts that we had made. But he had none to hand, so he gave me his. So I am the owner of a passport belonging to the man that was murdered this morning at dawn in Tehran in an IRGC, a Revolutionary Guard facility in which he was staying, having visited Iran to pay his respects to and meet for the first time the new president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. As Ayatollah Khamenei said today, the Israeli enemy have slaughtered a guest in our home, and only revenge of the highest order could possibly pay for that. There's no sign yet of anything in the air. Perhaps it won't come in the air. There's no sign of anything heading towards Israel. Perhaps the target for the revenge will not be in Israel, or even necessarily Israeli. The Iranian government said just an hour or two ago that the United States must share co-responsibility for this great crime of murdering a negotiator, a man who was in charge of negotiating with the country that then murdered him. It's positively medieval. Not since medieval times, actually, can I recall a high-profile negotiator being murdered by the people he was negotiating with. Ismail Haniyeh is in a better place now, and his aura will only grow in the pantheon in which he now stands. And someone has probably already been chosen to take his place as the head of the political bureau of the Islamic resistance movement in Palestine, usually known as Hamas. I say Hamas because you get algorithmically strangled and shadow banned if you say it out loud in the land of the free, as we used to call ourselves. Ismail Haniyeh's replacement will probably be Khalid Mishaal, who previously held that position before. Mishaal will have exactly the same political line, exactly the same steadfastness as his predecessor, who had exactly the same political line and exactly the same steadfastness as his predecessor, Rantisi, who had exactly the same political line and exactly the same fortitude and steadfastness as his predecessor, the founder of Hamas, Sheikh Yassin. Now, I'm not a supporter of Hamas. I don't know how many times I have to say that before some thick skulls can take it in. I'm a supporter of Palestine's Nelson Mandela, Marwan Barghouthi, whose son, Arab Barghouthi, is our first guest this evening. But the Palestinian people must choose their own leaders. They did choose Haniyeh, and Haniyeh was their leader. So the situation now can only be bleak, can't it? Hezbollah are going to have to retaliate for the murder of one of their top men. Iran will have to retaliate for this gratuitous and grievous blow to their national prestige. To have a visitor slain in such a way on their soil is a very, very serious blow to their armor propre, to their dignity, to their prestige as a country. And Hamas will have to retaliate. Maybe it doesn't have, for the moment, much to retaliate with, but its retaliation will take the form of stiffening its resistance and their determination not to be exterminated by their Israeli enemies. And undoubtedly, it's the end of negotiations for a ceasefire. So you are going to have to continue to watch the horrors that continued again today. 46 people murdered today in Gaza alone. I have no figures for the West Bank, but be sure those numbers are about to steeply rise. 77 were wounded today in the Gaza Strip. One of them was an Al Jazeera journalist, Mr. Al Ghul, who had his head blown off, so that sitting in the front of his car was a torso with a press vest on it, but no head. The head had been blown clean off by a targeted strike targeted at the Al Jazeera broadcast journalist of note, who for the last 10 months, despite having been picked up, despite having been tortured by Israel, had continued to tell the truth to his viewers in their hundreds of millions across the Arab world and across the rest of the globe on social media and on other networks. Mr. Al Ghul is, I don't know which number of journalists that have been deliberately targeted and murdered by Israel. Which brings me to the next target of my ire this evening. Elon Musk has gone quite mad. Or Elon Musk is a deeply compromised individual. Because it can't be for money that he's doing what he's doing, or can it? It can't be because the shekels were stuffed into his pocket, unlike the American political class in the Congress and so on. It must be another reason why Elon Musk, the man who says he champions free speech, is found in a grand embrace with the man who habitually murders journalists in their hundreds, who blows the head of prominent broadcast journalists, appears to be Elon Musk's best friend. And this friendship is now laying waste to the Twitter accounts of prominent Palestinian supporters on the X platform, on the Twitter platform. But it's not just his newfound love of Benjamin Netanyahu. Newfound because even 12 months ago it was scarcely discernible, and other signs were beginning to be discernible, like daffodils in spring. But now Musk has reverted to all out, all guns blazing, no pun intended, support for the murder machine that is the Israeli cabinet. The question is, why? The question is, will he allow me to say these words on his platform? The question is, will he continue to shadow ban and algorithmically suppress anything and everything that puts his newfound best friend, Benjamin Netanyahu, in a bad light? And it's hard to go a single day without finding umpteen examples of the reasons why Netanyahu is a very, very, very bad man. But it's not just that. Musk has now thrown his considerable social media weight, and one presumes his very deep pockets, into trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela. Why? Why, Elon Musk? What's Venezuela got to do with you? I know why you said a couple of years ago that we will coup wherever we want to coup, because you had a material interest in the lithium deposits in Bolivia. But what skin have you got in the Venezuelan game? Why are you trying to overthrow the legitimate government of Venezuela that's just been re-elected for a new presidential term in the form of President Nicolas Maduro? Now, I've got every reason to believe that it's to do with the black gold that lies in profusion under the soil and under the waters in the aforementioned country. Although Musk, on the face of it, is not actually in the oil business. In fact, one is led to believe that he's not much of a fan of fossil fuels, except when they're burning his way through the atmosphere on the way to Mars. What exactly is Musk doing in Venezuela? And who is he doing it for? Well, the best guess is he's doing it for the American government. The American government that he purports to despise. The American government that he's thrown tens of millions of dollars into defeating in November at the next general election. The American deep state, CIA, National Security Agency, and the multiplicity of agencies that used to run Twitter and that Musk said he had driven out of the building. But now he's openly working for them in the attempt to overthrow the government of Maduro. Now, it's true, Maduro is a stalwart supporter of the Palestinians, and it's true that his opposition were equally zealous supporters of Netanyahu and Israel. So that may or may not have something to do with it. But we've now reached a stage where the richest man in the world, with the most powerful media platform in the world, has set his sails on a course of regime change in a global south country with strategic partnership relations with Russia. And here I'm going to say something that some of you won't like, including some of the Venezuelans won't like. It's about time Venezuela stopped trying to please the powers in the West that will never rest until they have overthrown them. Why are you giving the United States these periodic opportunities to mount a color revolution, to mount a coup in your country? Britain had no elections when Hitler was at the Channel ports. The British government formed a national unity government and stayed in power throughout the war. Why are you, Venezuela, continuing to please these human rights watchers and NGOs and Western governments by giving them opportunity after opportunity for their satraps, their stooges, their puppets to try and overthrow the popular revolution of the Venezuelan masses still marching, still standing firm in the name of Hugo Chavez and the Bolivarian Revolution? If it was me, I'd say that's it. The Constitution is suspended. There will be no more elections. There will be no more opposition satraps running around Venezuela with millions of dollars to spend subverting the government. There will be no more gold-toothed emigres in Miami calling the shots in periodic periods of elections and other activities in Venezuela. It's time to shut up shop. It's time to throw yourselves fully into the bricks. It's time to do what Nicaragua has done and invite your friends in the bricks to assist in your security, to accept that the West will never tolerate you. No matter how many elections you have, no matter how many referenda you have, no matter how much of a constitution you have, no matter how pristine the Carter Center tells everyone your elections are, no matter how many international observers you bring to testify that it was a flawless election, none of that matters. They have decided already that your revolution is going to be brought down, that your president is going to be destroyed. It's time to rely on your friends. There ain't no regime change operations in Cuba because they know how futile they are. They know that the Cuban people and their government, their party, their people and their army are one hand in defense of Cuban sovereignty, and it's about time that Venezuela took the same course of action. Time only for a brief reference to a miserable little crime. HuwEdwards was the voice of the British state mouthpiece, the BBC. He commented on royal weddings and funerals. He commented on the state opening of Parliament. He commented and compared the great occasions of state in the United Kingdom, and all the time that he was being paid as the highest paid BBC employee, he was a dirty little pervert. A pervert that made indecent images of children. He was already in a scandal, but that scandal is not what he pled guilty today for. He pled guilty today because his phone number came up in an entirely unrelated case involving a paedophile in Cardiff in Wales. That paedophile, who made lots of images of children in indecent poses and indecent activities, was intimately linked with HuwEdwards. And HuwEdwards was making indecent images on his devices from a jailed paedophile in Wales. It doesn't get much more disgraceful than that. In January, the BBC gave HuwEdwards a further increase in salary of £40,000, making him the highest paid BBC broadcaster in history. The BBC, which lectures all and sundry as to how they should behave. The BBC, which lectures all and sundry. The HuwEdwards that lectured all and sundry. Who can forget his memorable interview with the other scumbag Andrew Marr, formerly of the BBC, outside number 10 Downing Street, on the day that the Iraqi government was toppled back in 2003. Edwards teed it up for Andrew Marr. How does Tony Blair stand this evening? He asked Andrew Marr. Andrew Marr answered, he stands a much taller man than all of his critics, who suddenly look very, very small. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
The 1897 edition of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, read by George Galloway, available only on Patreon.
The cylinder was artificial, hollow, with an end that screwed out. Something within the cylinder was unscrewing the top. Good heavens, said Ogilvy. There's a man in it, men in it, half roasted to death, trying to escape. At once, with a quick mental leap, he linked the thing with the flash on Mars. The thought of the confined creature was so dreadful to him that he forgot the heat and went forward to the cylinder to help turn. But luckily, the dull radiation arrested him before he could burn his hands on the still glowing metal.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now, you can get that reading of me trying to be Orson Welles, reading War of the Worlds, on my Patreon page, along with, free of charge, the 2 films, The Killings of Tony Blair, which I think is a document of some considerable historic importance, and The Killing of David Kelly. It's called The Strange Death of Dr. David Kelly. You can get both those films and War of the Worlds, and from tomorrow, a daily dialogue with me on Patreon. I need your support on it. This show needs your support on it. To stay at 2 shows per week, we need your support on it. And to get to 3 shows per week, which is our next ambition, needs your support. The fastest, easiest way to support us for the price of a cup of coffee in an insalubrious cafe per week, if you think I'm worth it, is patreon.com/George Galloway. Now, we've got a poll running, as always. Has the Gaza war revealed the impotence of the United Nations? Is the Pope a Catholic? Answer yes or no on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, my Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. 22,595 of you have voted already. Let's get this one to 30,000 by the end of the show. If you want to comment on what you've heard or not heard and would like to have heard, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344, and it's free of charge in the United Kingdom and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and in the rest of the world, it's 44203 966 2625. Arab Barghouthi, aforementioned, is a Palestinian activist and commentator and a regular guest on the show. Who better to talk us through the events of the last 48 hours or so? Arab Barghouthi, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Let's start with the murder at dawn of the Hamas chief negotiator, Ismail Haniyeh. How big a shock, how big a surprise, how big an impact is this going to have in the Palestinian territories?
Well, thank you for having me, George. I think I want to start this by sending my condolences not only to the Haniyeh family, but also to the whole Palestinian people for the loss of a historical leader such as Ismail Haniyeh. It's, to be honest, a very sad moment for all Palestinians. The assassination policy that the Israeli government has been practicing against all Palestinian leaders who oppose the illegal occupation of our land has been something that the Israelis used for decades now. We've lost hundreds of great leaders of this cause. And I think that the Israelis don't want to understand one fact, and the fact is no one leader or the assassination of any leader would stop the Palestinian people from our struggle, because this is a just cause and we're struggling for freedom and living in dignity. And I don't think that any assassination would stop us from that. But with that being said, I think that we all mourn the loss of a unifying leader, a national leader for all of Palestine, and not only for a certain political party.
Has there been any response from Ramallah, from the Palestine Authority? I haven't seen any. Has there been any?
I mean, we like the Palestinian Authority's official position is that they condemn, of course, what happened and the assassination and all of that. But I think that overall, in the past 10 months, the Palestinian Authority, unfortunately, has been a little bit helpless to face what's happening. I don't think that they have been able to provide protection to the Palestinian people, even in the West Bank. We have been going, as you know, and facing the highest and the peakest of the settler terrorism that has been happening in the West Bank. Nor there has been a clear position on the genocide that is taking place in Gaza. But with all that being said, I think that we Palestinians need the most. If we needed this, we needed it now, which is the Palestinian unity. And we need to unify, and we need to face this aggressive attack by the Israeli government. I think that we have lost hope in the international community. The green light that has been given to Israel hasn't been given to any country in modern history. And we are done with, complaining or saying that the international law is useless. The international community and the Western governments are complicit in what's happening. But now we need to unify as Palestinian people, because this is the only way. Because in my view, we are not only defending Palestine, we are defending humanity, because humanity is failing in Palestine, and it's being shown every day, live streamed on TV, and it's very unfortunate. We are trying our best not to lose hope, but to be honest, George, this news today, and with Al Jazeera reporter, and with the massacres that are going day after day after day, it's been hard to hold ourselves and to keep going. But I don't think we have any other choice.
No, indeed. And you paid condolences to the Haniyeh family, but of course, a very significant number of those have already been murdered. Haniyeh's sons were murdered, his grandchildren were murdered. This kind of bloodlust was effectively mocked by Netanyahu today. He, in a refrain, the name's Bond, James Bond, he put on his sunglasses, said, "The name's Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu." These people are laughing at the so-called international community and international law, aren't they?
They are, and they are getting exactly what they want. The last thing that we expected, even if we already had no hope in the Western governments, the last thing that we expected is for the likes of Ben Gvir and Smotrich to be the biggest leaders of the current Israeli government. And I think that Netanyahu is a pure war criminal. Everybody knows that. I don't think that the history books will have any mercy on him, and he knows that very well. But he's using the fact that the American government is so weak in front of him. They applaud him, as we saw in the shameful in the shameful scenes in the Congress, in the American Congress. And as a Palestinian, I was absolutely disgusted to see this guy being applauded by the American government and the American Congress for his crimes. And it's just very clear to us what's happening. What's happening is that you have the Western governments that are supporting the racism in this world, because I always want to remind everyone that this is all about racism. Because if we were definitely if we were white or Europeans, as we saw with Ukrainians, and of course, rightfully so, everybody would stop the Israelis. But because we're brown, we're Muslim, we're Christians, we don't have the same immunity as other people. And I think that it's becoming very clear to us. But the only hope that we have is that the Israeli government is getting exposed. And when they get exposed for what they are, for 76 years, not for a year or two, since October 7th, they have been an apartheid state. They have been colonizers and occupiers of our land, and everybody knows that. But now I think that a whole generation is getting raised to see the war criminals that the Israeli governments are. And I think that this will benefit us as Palestinians, because in the near future, we are still hopeful that we will have a new generation of leaders that can lead this world with justice and right values, and to apply these values on everyone, and not to have the double standards that we have against us Palestinians. It's unbelievable to see the scenes of the psychopath. And to be honest, I'm really disgusted by these so-called world leaders.
Now, do you agree with the Iranian government that this murder this morning in Tehran could not have been carried out without American green light and without American collusion? That's the stance of the Iranian government, which I didn't expect, to be honest, because it requires them now to do something about that. Do you think it's true that the assassination came from a submarine-launched missile, that the air defenses of Iran completely missed it? All of that sounds a bit James Bondish to me.
It does. And I don't think that we have any details, but I don't think also that the Americans are like that interested in stopping the genocide that is happening. They are, they saw the Israelis expand the war with Lebanon. They did kill leaders in Hezbollah and in other parties. All over the region. They committed assassinations in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Iran, in every country that you can think of. And that's not a behavior of a country that is defending itself. That's a behavior of a regime that is looking for a new world war. And I think that it just baffles me to see the American government not being able to stop Netanyahu, because it is going to cost them the most. I think the Americans will be the biggest losers if this war expands. And I think that they need to be more strict with the Israelis. But unfortunately, when you're complicit with the very government that you're trying to control, I don't think that you can do much about it. And they have been seeing that things are expanding, are going to explode at some point. And they have done nothing because they are so weak in front of Netanyahu. And we saw that in the Congress.
Now tell me finally, if you will, a true horror story emerged this week from the occupied territories, where a group of soldiers pled self-defense for the almost unbelievable crime of brutally sodomizing Palestinian prisoners to the point of hospitalization and serious medical and critical medical problems. They said that they were pleading self-defense to that. The court found 7 of them guilty and put them in jail, and a mob of other soldiers broke down the jail, freed them, and the court has now set them free and set aside their convictions. This so-called most moral army in the world seems to find a new way every day of proving themselves the most bestial army in the world. Talk us through that issue.
Well, I think this issue is very sad, and I think that the documented cases of Palestinian political prisoners that have been killed is now in the tens. We are talking about maybe between 50 and 60 political prisoners that have been either killed or neglected inside prison until they died, and we lost them. Of course, other than maybe tens, if not hundreds, of cases that are undocumented, especially from the Gaza prisons and the Gaza camps that they put them in. I think as someone who is from a family of a Palestinian political prisoner, who is my father, we live in a nightmare every single day. How can we not live in a nightmare when we know that our loved ones are being, jailed by these criminals that have full impunity to do whatever they want? This is the first case that you have any sort of accountability for a sexual assault, a rape, an absolute shame on this so-called the only democracy in the Middle East. And it's very shameful what happened, but this is the first time that they do any accountability. They have killed prisoners. We talked about Tahir Abu Asab, who was absolutely beaten up until a piece of his skull was on the floor, and he kept bleeding for hours until they came and they took him. Another friend of mine, Arafat, he was left in an open area without food, without water, and under the sun until he basically died after 2 days. And he's 25 years old, and he went there healthy. Just today, my cousin, Watan, he was released from Israeli prisons, and we didn't recognize him because he lost so many kilos, and he's not the same person. You can tell the torture that they go through, and they put prisoners in very small rooms, 10, 15 prisoners for a room that barely can fit 5 people. The conditions in there are inhumane and horrible. And the fact that the Israelis are in the Knesset, we're not talking about the mobs, we're talking about the Knesset, is debating if they should, punish soldiers who committed rape against Palestinians. This shows you what this society is becoming. And I think the dehumanization of the Palestinian people is something that will be studied in history on how we got here. And I can't wait for that moment in a few years, hopefully, that we can look at this and we can learn not to have this oppression against any people in the future, because this is something that's unbearable, and we as Palestinians, we can't take it anymore.
Well, we don't need to look in the crystal ball. We can read the book. This is precisely the dehumanization followed by atrocity and annihilation that Jews in Europe, in Germany and in German-occupied Europe, suffered in the Holocaust. And we, all of us, now are forced, and rightly so, to never forget the Holocaust. And yet, these same kind of dehumanizing, the notion that a Palestinian is a subhuman, that you cannot rape a Jew, but you can rape a non-Jew, that's what was being said in the Knesset. This is all so redolent for someone my age of the history of Europe in the 1930s and 40s.
I totally agree. I think that, many people, they take offense when you talk about the Holocaust, and they say that you can't compare the Holocaust to what's happening and all of that. I think in the modern world, this is the modern Holocaust. And we do respect the genocide that happened back then, but it just doesn't make sense that we're going through something similar right now in Gaza, and what's happening in the camps with the Palestinian political prisoners. The closest thing to the what happened in the Holocaust. I think that it's very, they are looking at us as subhumans. I don't think that they look at us as humans. And it's very sad to see, the young generation of Israelis, how they look at Palestinians, how they laugh at the videos of Palestinian suffering and Palestinian blood. I think that you need to be a sick society that feeds sickness and, and violence from childhood to come with adults who think like that, and even children who think like that. I think that the only way to move forward is for the world to shed the light on the Palestinian suffering and to look at us as human beings. But we're not going to beg anyone to look at us as human beings. If we have to resist, we will resist, because resistance is legal by international law against your occupier. And I don't think now any two people can disagree on the fact that we are occupied and we are oppressed and we are getting killed and imprisoned and brutalized every single day, and our homes are getting demolished, not only in Gaza but also in Hebron, in Jenin, in Tulkarem. And it's very obvious what the Israeli government's objective is. It's to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people, to use genocide into ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people, because they have never stopped ethnically cleanses. If you study the Palestinian cause since 1948, they have never stopped to the long-term project with ethnically cleansing the Palestinian people, and then they use the two-state solution as this to hypnotize us, the key word and the magic word to hypnotize us into thinking that one day we will live in peace. They never wanted peace, and it's very obvious.
Arab Barghouthi, thanks as always for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Has the Gaza war revealed the impotence of the United Nations? Yes or no? Get voting. The phone numbers again, US and Canada, toll free, +1 844 944 3344. Free of charge in the UK and Ireland, 0808 196 5522. And in the rest of the world, 44203 966 2625. I'll be right back. Stay tuned. Let me say that you can listen to the audio-only version of MOATS on our MOATS podcast, and the numbers on that are going through the roof. Just search MOATS with George Galloway on Apple, Spotify, Google, or whichever platform you listen to your podcasts on. In recent weeks, it's been the #1 political podcast in Benin, Jordan, the Gambia, Qatar, Jamaica, Ghana, Iceland, Malaysia, Singapore, Sweden, and the Philippines. #1 political podcast in all those countries. Truly, truly phenomenal. Do you know that BBC News has lost 40% of its audience in the last 2 years? It's official. And of course, that is the sensible thing to do. But to get people to tune in and change course and listen to a radically different point of view is even more difficult. But it's happening. And the numbers that we are racking up are now in their millions.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now, if you've just joined the show, remember, you can download the MOATS podcast from tomorrow morning to get a compressed, bite-sized version of the show. We're #1 in Ghana this week, and really big numbers again in China. I'll never get over that one. And also France. We're in the top 10 in Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. Now, it's all kicked off in Whitehall in London. Just hearing that violence is breaking out on Whitehall in London tonight, with protesters clashing with police and letting off flares through the large metal gates of Downing Street. Demonstrations are taking place in the wake of the Southport knife attacks. Police officers in riot gear are currently protecting the Downing Street gates. It's been reported that some protesters have attempted to kick down a fence on Whitehall. The Metropolitan Police have imposed conditions tonight for the protesters to break up by 8:30, which I think we are in a position to report they have as yet not. Aoife is in Dublin on Iran. Aoife, welcome.
Hello, how you doing, George? It's absolutely a pleasure to talk to you. I'm calling you here from my house in Dublin, Ireland. I just wanted
you.
to see if I could call you up and just draw a parallel with something that happened there a couple of months back in Dublin. And we had an incident where we had 3 kids that unfortunately were stabbed in a very unusual incident in the middle of Dublin, which was closed off quite fast, and then riots proceeded after that. We also then had this happen to these poor little kids in Southport, where they were then the victim of another stabbing incident, and then followed by these other riots. It's just something that has stuck out to me because from a post that I was reading on X, somebody called ElonMusk. He is basically commenting on the current situation from inside Israel. So, Palestinian viewpoint, which I just hoped to be able to read out to you, if you don't mind, in relation to these.
Go ahead,
My view, the horrific Southport attack, where multiple children were stabbed to death in a completely inexplicable way, needs to be looked at together with the Trump assassination attempt and the video, I suppose, Muslim terrorists threatening to in Beirut in Paris. He says, for a war with Iran, the powers that be need Western populations scared, confused, and increasingly turning to authoritarianism and Islamophobia. You'll see, the closer we get to the official launch of an Iran campaign, the more frequently bizarre, harrowing, unexplained events will happen, and there will always be an anti-Muslim sentiment involved. We are being taken back to the period between 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot of very, very strange and scary stuff is about to be unleashed upon us until Trump takes the White House and Europe is reeling from far-right sentiments. And then it says, white European colonialism is preparing for one ugly exit. What do you think?
Well, I don't know is the answer because it's not yet clear. For international viewers, 3 small children, the ages of my own youngest children, girls, were cruelly murdered. They were stabbed to death by a young 17-year-old male, not yet officially named, which is a problem in itself, to which I shall come. And he was disarmed and arrested at the scene, though still not yet charged for reasons I cannot fathom. This horrific mass murder of children who were at a dance class in a community hall in the lovely town of Southport in Merseyside. This horrific crime didn't just murder 3 young children, it wounded and maimed other children, their parents, and their teacher. It was a bloodbath. And the brave police officers who disarmed him, and the window cleaner who weighed in, a man who seemed to me of Portuguese background, and one of the murdered children was Portuguese, it should not be underestimated. A youth with a knife covered in blood was disarmed by unarmed officers. The crime sent a shock wave across the country and beyond. And this is where it begins to get very dirty and murky indeed. An Indian-based Twitter account put out a completely invented set of supposed facts about the attacker, which have set in train some very dangerous currents in Britain. The Indian-based outfit stated that the killer was an illegal migrant who had arrived on a boat, a dinghy, in the English Channel just a year ago, was known to the intelligence services, and had a name, Ali al-Shakati, which translated from Arabic means Ali the apartment. Every single word of that fake news was a lie, and one must presume a deliberate lie. And it went halfway across the world before the truth could get its boots on. Before you could say Tommy Robinson, a group of neo-fascist thugs had gathered in a siege of a tiny little mosque in the town of Southport, and the worshippers inside that mosque were fearing for their lives. A thin blue line of police officers was protecting them, and that thin blue line came under vicious and unrelenting assault from bricks and other projectiles. Many, many officers were taken to hospital, in some cases quite seriously wounded. One officer with a broken nose. It turns out, although not yet officially released, because the suspect is 17 years old and therefore a minor, and minors are not usually named, and details about them are not usually given, but in that vacuum, fascist forces have been trying to incite a pogrom against Muslims in Britain on an entirely false basis. The suspect is not a Muslim. The suspect was not a migrant, was not an illegal migrant, was born in Britain, and his parents come from the distinctly non-Muslim country of Rwanda in Africa. Rwanda is 98% non-Muslim. This 17-year-old suspect has no known connection to Muslims or Islam in any way. And yet there were people last night definitely ready, like a Ku Klux Klan mob, to commit a lynching of the local Muslim community. Luckily, the people of Southport have risen to the occasion. One man, Barney, God bless you, sir, has already rebuilt the wall around the mosque. In baking hot sun today, he was laying bricks all day for nothing to rebuild the wall. And he said, if they come and knock it down again, I'll rebuild it all over again. The street was left like a war zone, and the local people are busily cleaning it up. And now, these same thugs, who earlier at the Manchester airport incident were wrapping themselves in the mantle of police lovers, are attacking the police again in Whitehall in central London. Let's take another call before the break. Terence, our old friend, nowadays in Corby. Go ahead, Tel.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Galloway. Yes, of course, in glorious Corby. And we're looking at the so-called the Free Western Press, and it's nice to see that you've been described in many guises over the last 10 days. One of them was a former divisive politician, which I think is hilarious. And the reason being because the narrative...
Am I formerly divisive or formerly a politician?
Well, I think they tried both. Formerly a divisive former politician, that's it, yeah. I think they tried both. And it made me laugh because, you know, you just summed up, in essence, what the Secret Services are doing here. They know the social contract is broken. They've no intention of building new houses, no intention of reinvesting in our education in Britain, and it's the same across America. So therefore, the tumult they want is what they get in. And you've just described it in graphic, honest detail. And the more you keep doing that, the more the Mr. Galloway will always be the same Mr. Galloway, without an ego, without anything to add other than the truth. You keep doing what you're doing. Because people like me are right alongside you on most things, not on everything, but on most things, because you hold the truth. And that doesn't cost a penny. And what the state doesn't like is the truth coming out. You've summed it up quite well. Keep going, Mr. Galloway.
God bless you, Terence. I really appreciate that. They'd be very foolish to write me off as a former politician. Actuarially speaking, there's always a by-election round the corner, and actuarially speaking, when there's a by-election, I stand a good chance of winning it. Coming up after the break, Caleb Maupin, journalist, broadcaster, speaker, and political analyst, he wrote a book, published it on Amazon 4 years ago on Kamala Harris. It was going quite tidily, selling well, being reviewed well, until the day that Kamala Harris became the nominee presumptive, in which point Amazon took it off their shelves altogether. Under public pressure, they may now have put it back on again, but it's now selling like hotcakes. It's the Barbara Streisand effect. The book they try to ban always goes to the top of the bestseller list. We'll be talking all things Americana with Caleb Maupin after this short break. Stay tuned.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
He had that Clinton thing. His eyes were round and big and smiley, and he was very charming.
He became this incredible pop idol kind of prime minister.
I think most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am.
New Labour was backed by the most powerful media interests because they realised he was representing them.
He was caught red-handed trading policy in return for hard cash from a businessman.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain.
Both Bush as well as Tony Blair are now wanting to plunge the world into a holocaust.
JP Morgan paid him off for the Iraq war. The man is a war criminal.
Is Tony Blair a war criminal? In my opinion, yes.
Most definitely.
The pursuit of money has become the dominant theme in your life.
All these relationships are, in most people's estimation, corrupt relationships.
No previous Labour Prime Minister has behaved in this shameful, money-grubbing way.
How do you sleep at night? You know, it's that. It's as a person.
Has the Gaza war revealed the impotence of the United Nations? Is the Pope a Catholic, and do bears defecate in the woods? Yes or no? 24,631 of you have voted. You've got about 45 minutes to get your vote in. Caleb Maupin, old friend of the show, journalist, broadcaster, speaker, and political analyst, to which we need to add the word author. He's the author of several books, but the one in question is his book on Kamala Harris. Caleb, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. Since I last spoke to you 48 hours ago, I understand Amazon have put the book back up for sale. Let's clear that one up first.
Sure. Yesterday, or actually Monday evening, without any explanation, I received an email. Your book has been published on Amazon. And that seems to be the fact that they, with no explanation, similar to the manner in which it was taken down, they put it back up. For those who maybe want to get caught up on what happened, I wrote this book, and if you have this edition of the book, it's a collector's item. I wrote this book. I published it on August. Yeah, I published it on August 31st, 2020. After Kamala Harris became Joe Biden's vice presidential nominee. And it sold a few hundred copies, got some good reviews. And it was reviewed in the Morning Star over in the UK. It was reviewed in some newspapers in India. And, it didn't get a huge amount of circulation, but that was fine. And everything was fine with it. And then on Sunday, July 21st, Joe Biden stepped down and did not announce he was going to run once again. He made clear he was not seeking the presidency. And then the next day, Monday, the media started coronating Kamala Harris. And it was Monday evening, 7:26 p.m. local time. I got an email from Amazon telling me there was an issue with the cover of the book, which is odd. But I immediately uploaded it with a new cover because I figured, hey, if there's an issue with the cover, I don't want to lose any time. Kamala Harris is in the news. Wouldn't let me upload it. And then I tried again, denied. I tried again, denied. I tried to upload it about 7 times on Tuesday. Each time was denied. So I put it on Lulu.com, which is an alternative to Amazon, and it was selling quite well. And then Thursday, people started tweeting at me and texting me about how they could no longer process transactions on Lulu, and their credit cards were all being denied when they tried to buy the book on Lulu.com. So I started selling the PDF of it on a website called Gumroad, where I just sold the PDF file of it. And now Monday, it seems like after a huge amount of attention was given to the book, a lot of outrage from people like Max Blumenthal, Jimmy Dore, Candace Taylor, all kinds of people from all kinds of sides of the political spectrum spoke up. Now Amazon, with no explanation, has spoken up. What's interesting, though, is that this seems to fit in with a bigger scandal because at this point it's been revealed that Google seemed to be manipulating searches to hurt Donald Trump, to not acknowledge the attempted assassination that took place earlier this month. A lot has been going on the part of the tech giants, and the removal of this book, this seems to fit in with a whole pattern of trying to skew things online to serve one candidate.
Well, that's the very subject I wanted to come on to, so a perfect segue. We have on this day Amazon taking your book off and then being forced to put it back on because I don't want to act as a spoiler. It's not very complimentary about Kamala Harris, your book, and rightly so. They took it down for that reason, not for any other reason, not anything to do with the cover. The owner of Twitter, ElonMusk, having disappeared into the grisly embrace, grisliest of embraces from Netanyahu, has now launched what can only be described as a regime change jihad against the elected government of Venezuela, totally abusing his own platform that he owns, posting fake videos, getting readers noted for putting up videos from 2017 as if they were videos from today or yesterday. Elon Musk has joined a regime change operation being mounted by the US deep state, having, of course, paraded his wares as the nemesis of deep state control of Twitter in the first place. And the Google example that you give is evident to all of us who are trying to follow the Donald Trump assassination story. The question is, how can you find anything written about it? There's nothing going on, as if it had never happened. And an issue, an incident of the gravest importance that could have changed the whole world if it had succeeded, is now effectively, like Hunter Biden's laptop story, disappeared by the tech giants. Your comments?
Well, I think Nicolas Maduro had it right yesterday when he said that the same American government, the same forces that tried to kill Donald Trump, that killed John F. Kennedy, are now trying to destabilize Venezuela. And it's interesting that Maduro would say that because Donald Trump was not great to Venezuela as president, but we now understand the people within his administration who pushed for that were people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, who later betrayed Donald Trump. So these things are nuanced and complicated. Donald Trump is not trusted by the foreign policy apparatus of the United States, the same foreign policy apparatus that's trying to destabilize Venezuela, fomenting all kinds of fake news and inciting revolt in that country. And let me add, the same color revolution apparatus, the same international global revolution apparatus that has anointed Kamala Harris Let's not forget, I believe it's Kamala Harris's niece lives in India, where she works for George Soros NGOs to try and destabilize India and bring down Modi and the government of Modi in India. And let's also not forget that the Hillary Clinton State Department and the forces that ran it are the very forces that backed Kamala Harris in 2020 and pushed for her to be included on the Democratic ticket as VP in 2020 by Joe Biden. And if you look at the Hillary Clinton State Department, what they did during Barack Obama's first term as president, the damage is massive. The world is still recovering from the destruction of Libya. If you look at that country, that was once the most prosperous country in Africa, and now it's in ruin. People are drowning in the Mediterranean trying to get out of the disaster that was created by military intervention in that country. The Syrian civil war that was fomented, 500,000 dead, if not more, millions of refugees. And Barack Obama himself got rid of Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State and replaced her with John Kerry in his second term. And you'll notice that U.S. foreign policy shifted. Barack Obama's second term was focused on the Iran nuclear deal, establishing diplomatic relations with Cuba, the FARC negotiations in Colombia. Barack Obama wanted to be known as a peacemaker, and that Hillary Clinton State Department was doing all kinds of things without Barack Obama's knowledge and permission, and that was revealed. And I talk about that in the book, and how Biden very much did not want Kamala Harris to be his VP, and there are divisions within our American elite. I argue that there are many within the military and many within the American anti-terrorism apparatus that just don't want another Arab Spring. And they look at Kamala Harris and say, this is another Arab Spring waiting to happen. This is a woman who has been groomed by the color revolution apparatus, by Anne Marie Slaughter and Samantha Power and all the forces that did so much damage during Barack Obama's first term. That's what Kamala Harris will bring in. And her record as a vicious prosecutor, her ties to George Soros and others, Kamala Harris's presidency is a very, very dangerous thing for the world.
Well, I've seen her dancing, I've seen her jiving, I've heard her jive talking. She's in full, I'm a young, sexy black woman mode at the moment. She sends twerkers out front to warm up the crowd. I mean, it's like an episode of the Blues Brothers watching her presidential campaign. How is she doing?
Well, according to mainstream media, she's just doing amazingly well. I mean, all the American people are just lining up to support her. The facts on the ground tell a little bit of a different story. I mean, we have never seen this level of amping up support for one candidate. You have what was done to my book. You have the number of news stories about how reporting on people should like Kamala because they already like Kamala. They have pulled out all the stops for Kamala Harris. But the facts remain that the American people don't much care for her, and that if she wants to present herself as someone who should inherit the legacy of Black Lives Matter, she has a lot of explaining to do about what she did as a prosecutor, about how the drug lab scandal of 2010 involved at least 1,000 people who went to jail or had criminal convictions overturned because her office was covering up that drug labs were turning over false positive results and people were being reported to have been using drugs when they weren't. She mocked Black Lives Matter protesters. She marched around the stage in Chicago in 2013 saying, build more schools, less jails, in this sarcastic, mocking voice. She was the queen of mass incarceration. Kevin Cooper was just 4 hours away from getting the death penalty. And the governor of California wanted DNA evidence to make sure he was actually guilty of the crime. And her office stepped in and tried to stop it and tried to prevent DNA evidence from being acquired. She wanted an innocent man dead. This is Kamala Harris. She's a very, very dangerous person with no qualms. I mean, her office actually argued on multiple occasions for keeping people in jail because they needed their cheap labor pool, that it was cheaper to use prison laborers than it was to use law-abiding citizens. And people were going to be kept in jail not on the basis of justice or the crimes they committed or whatnot, but on the basis of saving money, to avoid hiring people. This is outrageous. I mean, this is a person who doesn't really care about other people and how her actions affect them. And my book gets into a lot about where Kamala Harris came from, in particular, the Marxist father who has denounced her that no one wants to talk about. Her 85-year-old father who lives in Jamaica and has denounced her campaign, and that whole story, the baggage that she's got around that. There's so much that no one is talking about. When Barack Obama ran for president, we knew everything about him. We knew his mother. We knew his father. We knew the school he went to in Indonesia. We knew who his pastor was. We know nothing about Kamala Harris except she's funny sometimes, and she has a laugh that is catchy. A lot of people think it's a little bit demented, but it's supposed to be a catchy laugh, and we're supposed to vote for her on that basis. The more you dig into who she really is, you realize this is a frightening case of somebody brought in by a very frightening wing of our American deep state.
Well, the best way to deep dive into Kamala Harris is to get your book. We'll come back to it at the end of this interview. I want to ask you, though, one quite important question. I saw someone that I worked with 30 years ago in the States and respected, Dr. Phyllis Bennis. I saw her on television effectively shilling for Kamala Harris as someone who will be tougher on Netanyahu, who will be more sympathetic to the Palestinian agony than Biden and certainly Trump. Was Dr. Bennis an outrider there, or is this a thing?
Well, anyone who's worked as a Palestine solidarity activist in the Bay Area will tell you that Kamala Harris is very much an Israeli creation. Starting from when she became the district attorney of San Francisco, she was going on regular trips to Israel, being wined and dined and given the all-star treatment by the Israeli government. And when she would meet with Palestine activists, when they would come to her office, she would sit there and silently look at them, no questions, not even really listening to what they were saying. She has never been a friend of the Palestinians. But what I think we're seeing here is an attempt for the Democratic Party to try and keep the votes of Muslim Americans. Because in Michigan, which is a very key state in the upcoming election, you got lots of Muslims. Dearborn, Michigan is the highest concentration of Arab Americans in the country. And they see what Genocide Joe has done, and they're not going to go and vote for him like they once did because they see what he's doing and the license he's giving Israel. Minnesota has a lot of Muslims in it. Wisconsin has a lot of Muslims in it. There's been a lot of Muslim migration to the United States. And because of that, the Democrats very much want to present an understanding that they're not running, Joe Biden. They're running someone new, someone, with family from the developing world, et cetera. But when it gets down to it, this is what we saw under Barack Obama. Barack Obama was a 21st century Napoleon, right? We all know what Napoleon did. When Napoleon was trying to conquer Egypt and trying to drive out the British Empire and conquer Egypt and Syria for the French, he put up posters everywhere saying that he was a Muslim and they should follow him and he was going to be their friend against the British. Well, Napoleon was lying. It was a lie. He was just trying to gain the trust of the people there, and his staff joked about it. Napoleon wasn't a Muslim. Napoleon was simply trying to fake out the population, and that's what Barack Obama did. They rolled him out. He was going to reset everything from the Bush years. His middle name was Hussein. He'd been to a Muslim school. He's had Twitter wars with Netanyahu. But look what happened under Barack Obama. Libya was destroyed. Syria was reduced to chaos and civil war. Barack Obama was no friend of the Muslim world, and Israel got exactly what they wanted. And that's what will happen under Kamala Harris, but there will be a lot of smoke and mirrors and virtue signaling and theater. Donald Trump is honest about his ties to Netanyahu and his loyalty to Israel. Kamala Harris is trying to play games with the people, and I think that's what we need to recognize. The other thing that's worth noting is that after leaving office, Donald Trump noted very strongly how Netanyahu betrayed him. And he made a very, very public, acknowledgement of the fact that Netanyahu stabbed him in the back as he was leaving office. And that if you read Donald Trump's follow-up book, he wrote The Art of the Deal, but he also wrote The Art of the Comeback. And one of the things he talks about in The Art of the Comeback is payback and keeping track of who betrays you, and how when you have a downfall, that's a moment to know who stabbed you in the back and who your real friends are. So you have to wonder how much of a friend of Netanyahu Trump will really be after what happened when he left office.
Show us the book and tell us how we can get it, Caleb.
Well, it's back on Amazon, but you can get it on Gumroad. You can get it on Lulu. It's available, a new edition. And we actually are planning to distribute it in bulk at the Democratic National Convention because the fact that they pulled it and tried to suppress it shows that there's probably a lot of people who need to hear its content. So we're currently raising funds to distribute it in bulk at the Democratic National Convention to anyone who's there and cares to take a copy.
Everyone watching, buy it on the most convenient platform. And very much glad to see you again, Caleb. Thanks for coming on the mother of all talk shows. Best of luck with the relaunched book as the Gaza war revealed the impotence of the United Nations. Yes? No? Let's see how many of you vote in the next 30 minutes. And let's get this as a very big poll indeed. Coming up after this break is Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, Chair of American Studies at the University of Tehran. He's going to join us live from Tehran Airport. You really don't want to miss this. In fact, phone everybody up and tell them to tune in quickly. It's the mother of all talk shows. I'll be right back. I discussed with Mr. Jeremy Corbyn on the telephone, and I have told him that I am now going to announce that I, the Workers' Party, and I believe millions in the country, call on Jeremy Corbyn to launch a British version of the new Popular Front. He may or may not want to form a party himself. Others will remain in their own parties. But he must be the leader of a popular front. He's not a perfect leader, Mr. Corbyn. None of us are perfect leaders, but he is the leader. And he does have a seat in Parliament with which to lead the millions of people who today and increasingly over the next months and years will reject the policy, personalities and direction of a Keir Starmer government. So, Mr. Corbyn, I told you I was going to say these words, and I now formally say them. On behalf of the Workers' Party of Britain, we ask you to lead and unite all the forces of the left, of the radical forces in Britain who reject neoliberalism, who reject endless war, who oppose genocide. Mr. Corbyn, lead us. We will follow you, and I very much hope to hear positive news on that from you by return.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Has the Gaza war revealed the impotence of the United Nations? Well, overwhelmingly, most of you say yes, it has. On Telegram, 92% yes. On Twitter, 85% yes. On the YouTube community poll, 89% yes. And on the YouTube stream, 87%. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, don't forget to like the show and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. We're getting closer to 500,000 subscribers, which will help me a very great deal. Algorithmically speaking, the phone numbers in the US and Canada, toll free 1+1 844 944 3344. That's +1 844 944 3344. Free of charge in the United Kingdom and Ireland, 0808 196 5522. And the worldwide number 44203 966 2625. Now the calls are backing up, and we are trying to get Professor Marandi on the phone in Tehran Airport. He'll be with us momentarily, but the reality is not everybody that wants on the show tonight is going to get on. I'm afraid that's just a fact. So if you don't get on, save your call for Sunday. Seyed in Watford on Iran is ready. What's on your mind, Seyed?
Hello, good evening, George Galloway MP. It's an honor to be speaking to you on your show.
Thank you.
I just want to highlight about the assassination on Ismail Haniyeh, obviously, today in Tehran. Now, it's obviously been a huge propaganda win for the Israelis and a huge security and intelligence failure on behalf of the Iranians. But I don't know, in my view, it seems to be indicating more than that. It seems to be indicating that there's some elements within the Iranian regime that are cooperating effectively with the Americans and therefore the Israelis. Because when you look at the two assassinations that happened today, now the one that happened in Beirut is understandable. The Israelis would have informants on the ground. The location that was bombed is a known Hezbollah stronghold in southern Lebanon, Beirut. So you could understand them being able to target the commander accurately in that case. However, when you compare in Ismail Haniyeh's case, he was in Tehran, and very few people would have known where he was staying, and what precise time frame he would be there, because the attack was carried out in such a precise way that apparently the missile went through the window inside into the apartment, I think. So, and at the right time, it just meant that to provide that precise information, location, and his whereabouts at that time must have been provided from within. And the only
not must have been, not must have been, Seyed, by any means, but could have been, is a legitimate point to make. But you mustn't jump to such sweeping conclusions based on purely circumstantial reasoning that for them to have known that there must have been some informer within the ranks of the Iranian government or the IRGC, which is an even bigger stretch. There's also, you didn't mention it, reports not yet confirmed, I'll ask the professor in a minute, about an IRGC general, another one, assassinated in Beirut this day, though that's not yet confirmed. But you're right that this marked a tremendous degree of precision on the part of the Israeli state. They would have known that at dawn he'd be at prayer in his apartment, and they killed him at exactly dawn, Fajr. So the question is, how did they know where he was? Well, I saw a report today, however banal this is the report, that Ismail was WhatsApping his son, one of his surviving sons at the time. And it's from spyware inserted in his WhatsApp that they were able to ascertain precisely his location. Now, I don't know if that's true. Professor Marandi, who's on his way back to Iran from Venezuela, will probably not know either, though he may hazard a guess. But taken together with other victories for Netanyahu, the murdering of at least one and maybe now two IRGC commanders in Beirut, the still unexplained, for me anyway, death, let me put it that way, of the former president of Iran, Raisi, and the foreign minister traveling in the same helicopter from the border of Azerbaijan, itself a nest of Mossad and Israeli state intelligence activities. And now this, with Ismail Haniyeh. I've seen a picture of the building in which he was staying, and it would appear to be quite a landmark building, begging the question why a guest of that importance, that significance, was staying there. So you're right to say there are questions, but you're not right to make the sweeping judgment that there's a problem inside the Iranian government itself. Let's go to Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi, not a part of the government, but chair of the American Studies at the University of Tehran, live in the back of a taxi from Tehran airport. Well, Professor, I'm very glad that you were able to make it, albeit from the back of a taxi, and we're already seeing the visual results of that. I hope the audio is better than the picture. You're very, very dark. But if you can hear me, would you kindly bring us up to date on what you know so far about the murder of Ismail Haniyeh, the very, very significant and important Palestinian leader, at dawn this morning in Tehran?
Well, as you know, I have just arrived, so I haven't been able to do anything really extraordinary.
I don't think this line. Yeah, go ahead. That's better. Go ahead.
Yes, I was saying that I don't think it is a major achievement for the Israeli regime to assassinate him, in the sense that gathering intelligence through the Americans, through the Europeans, for the Israelis is always possible. They're always being supported by Western powers, the Five Eyes, the U.S. Intelligence agencies provide Israel with all the Israeli regime with all the intelligence that they need. It is, of course, a major setback for Iran, but Trump has been assassinated too, just recently, and whether it was a lone gunman or a conspiracy, he was assassinated, and he was almost killed. So I don't think that this is something unique to Iran. All of the Western embassies in Iran collaborate with the United States, and Western embassies in neighboring countries to Iran gather information about Iran. They're all working with the Israeli regime, just like they are helping the Israelis carry out the genocide in Gaza. We know that drones and other intelligence gathering equipment is used to help the Israelis in Gaza. What I can say is that,
but he was living in Doha, and they didn't assassinate him there. They chose to assassinate him in Iran. There must be a reason for that.
That's right. I think the reason for that is that there's no reason for them to assassinate him in Doha. Doha is closely linked to the United States. If the United States tells Qatar to expel Hamas, Qatar will do that. Just like Turkey. Turkey is not doing anything in particular to support the resistance, nor is any other country in the region. The only country that is actively supporting the resistance, of course, alongside Yemen and Lebanon and Syria and Iraq, which we all know, the only country that's supporting the resistance is Iran, and Iran has been paying the price for decades. So I think it's obvious why, if he is going to be assassinated, he would be assassinated in Iran, because the Israeli regime feels that Iran is its top antagonist.
Well, yes, that's my point, that the attack was on Iran, really, rather than on Ismail Haniyeh.
Yes, well, I would say both, because Ismail Haniyeh was a hero, a martyr for the Palestinian cause. The Israelis, over the last 9-10 months, they have effectively wiped out his extended family, his children, his grandchildren, and that's because that's what the Israeli regime does. They target families, just like they allow their soldiers to rape men, just like they slaughter children day and night. That is how they behave. They bomb families in their homes because those families are related or linked to a particular person. So they carry out collective punishment, just as they're carrying out collective punishment against the whole of the Palestinian population by starving them, by destroying their all of their infrastructure, their ability to drink clean water, their ability to access food and medicine. And this, of course, is being done with full Western support. The West pretends at times that they're opposed to this, but they're facilitating this. They haven't sanctioned the regime. They are constantly sending in supplies so that the Israelis could continue with this Holocaust. But in any case, Ismail Haniyeh was a martyr for the Palestinian cause. But I think the reason, as you pointed out, for him to be murdered in Tehran was because it is Iran that is an adversary to the ethno-supremacist regime. Qatar or Turkey or the UAE or Saudi Arabia, some of them are openly friendly with the Israeli regime even today. Some of them pretend to be critical but continue to have trade and business or continue to allow oil to flow through their country. So there's no reason why the Israelis would target Haniyeh, the martyr Ismail Haniyeh, in any of those countries.
Now, the Supreme Leader has rightly stated that Iran will now have to take action, you might say high-value action, because of the high value of the crime that took place. I've seen all kinds of statements that if you have slaughtered a guest in our home, nothing in the Islamic culture could be more serious than that. I've no doubt, and I saw that the National Security Council was meeting in the home of the Supreme Leader today, within hours of the event. When can we expect, and what can we expect as a response from Iran? By which I mean this: Israel obviously carried out the crime, but Iran's view is that this crime could not have been carried out but without the permission and the collaboration of the United States. Does that mean that the response could come on Israel, on Israeli interests abroad, on American interests abroad? What do you think it means?
I don't know if the Americans were directly involved, but there's no doubt that the Israeli regime uses American intelligence and European intelligence. And as I said, European embassies in Iran, they have always been active in gathering intelligence against Iran and to help the United States. I think that there will be a direct response, and I think it will be a very painful response. And I think the Israeli regime will regret carrying out the attack. Now, one may ask, then why did they do it? And I think that we have to make a distinction between the interests of the regime and the interests of the people who are running the state, the government, the regime itself. Netanyahu and the people around him have their own interests. selfish interests, ideological interests, but the regime itself has lost the war. It is lost on the Lebanese border. After 10 months, it has gained nothing. It has lost in the Red Sea. The Americans have been unable to do anything for them. It is lost in Gaza. They've been unable to take this dot on the map. Slaughtering innocent people, killing a few commanders here and there doesn't change the reality on the ground that the Israeli regime is it's unable to win the war. It has lost the confidence of business leaders across the world. No one is going to invest in Israel in future. It's a small, puny, vulnerable regime, and everyone sees it for what it is. It is no longer seen as this invincible country or state that has fantastic intelligence gathering capabilities and that its technology is second to none. It has shown how deeply vulnerable it is, and I think that it is rapidly on the decline. So any escalation is only going to make this worse. It may serve Netanyahu's purposes, but it definitely is not going to serve the purposes of the regime itself. The regime is in a dead end. The longer the war lasts, the worse it is for the regime. It only deepens and strengthens global hostility towards the regime because of the genocide. And in addition to that, an escalation will only humiliate the regime further. So again, I think that we have to make a distinction between the interests of the Netanyahus in Israel, who may think that they've achieved something by murdering a person or by killing women and children, but the regime itself is being delegitimized. It is seen as weak and vulnerable, and any expansion of the war is only going to make it look worse. When the Iranians strike the Israelis, they will be seen as vulnerable, and no matter how the Western going to make things worse for the regime.
Finally, and I'm grateful to you taking these extraordinary steps to talk to us at all from the back of a taxi having just arrived from Tehran. It's confirmed that the senior Hezbollah leader, Fuad Shukr, was one of the fatalities in the terrorist attack on an apartment block in the Dahia in the southern part of Beirut. But there are also reports of another Iranian general of the IRGC also being assassinated in Lebanon today. Are you able to shed any light on either or both of those cases?
I don't have any information about a Lebanese, an Iranian general, because I've just returned, as you know, from Venezuela, and I was an observer for the election, and that is a fascinating story in itself. What the United States is trying to do in Venezuela, it reminds me of what they tried to do in Iran in 2009. But in any case, I don't have any information on that. What I can say is that it's not going to make a difference, even if they have assassinated an Iranian general, which I can't confirm. But even if they murder the leaders of the resistance, even if they murder the leaders of Iran, it's not going to make a difference. These are organizations, these are countries, these are people and groups that have each of them have many thousands of people who are capable and quite willing to carry on with the struggle and replace the martyrs. And we've experienced this for over 40 years now. Hezbollah has experienced this. Hamas, Ansarullah, or the Houthis, as the West likes to call them, Iran. It's not going to make a difference. What is important is that the world has changed. The Israeli regime has been exposed to the world as a genocidal, evil ethno-supremacist regime. Everyone now across the world knows what it is. Even in the West, despite the Western media, despite the desperate attempts to justify what the regime does, people are waking up. On the other hand, the regime has been exposed as weak and vulnerable after 10 months and of slaughter and genocide and murdering combatants. Where is the Israeli regime today? It's fighting a war on the border with Lebanon with zero progress. It is fighting in Gaza with zero progress, and the Americans are fighting on its behalf in the Red Sea with zero progress. And that will continue. If it doesn't get worse, it's definitely not going to get any better for the regime. And a regime like Israel, if it cannot defeat Hamas after 10 months, if it cannot defeat Hezbollah after 10 months, then I think the world will conclude that this regime simply cannot last.
Professor Marandi, as always, thank you very much for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Let me go to Quebec, where Yasser wants to talk about Iran. Yasser, welcome. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi there, Mr. Galloway.
Hi, go ahead, sir.
I wanted to talk about, obviously, the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. The key questions from a legal perspective, who done it and cui bono. I think you've hashed these questions in detail. There's hardly any doubt that who done it and cui bono. So all fingers are pointing towards Israel and its paymaster or paymasters. Today I'm going to be a bit, less charitable towards Iran, because as much as I respect and admire Dr. Professor Mohammad Marandi, I think we just can't hide behind nationalism every single time. This particular incident reveals the dimensions of very serious gaping holes in security in Iran. Wherever this complex, whether it was in the compound of the presidency or in close proximity, it was in a very secure area. Ismail Haniyeh was a marked man. He had the highest security risks swirling around him of all the attendees at the inauguration. For him to have been taken out by virtue of Pegasus software using WhatsApp or any reason whatsoever means literally no one is safe in Tehran, the capital, which is obviously the most ostracized country since February 1979 revolution. So I think today I'm going to be a bit tougher on Iran, because what does it say about their security apparatus right now? And also, they had their president die in a plane crash, thereby organizing this event for inauguration of the new president on 19th of May. Most analysts and watchers of Iran still don't buy the official explanation that it was a mere helicopter crash. There are conspiracy theories swirling around it. Some of them are quite credible. It's just that I think there is a need for serious, deep introspection on the part of Iranian authorities, that they just can't say this is a strategic defeat of Israel, or this is a tactical defeat of Israel, or it doesn't matter, we move on. I think there comes a time when one has to do some serious soul searching, serious introspection, serious audit and investigation. Another point that I quickly want to bring to your
attention. I think that you make a strong case. I wouldn't confuse the swan gliding serenely on the surface with the paddling like hell underneath. And we'll see what the Iranian direct response on Israel is going to be, and how serious it is, how successful it is. Then you might want to reevaluate your critique of the Iranian security apparatus. Criticisms that you have made, I share. And I really cannot see why Ismail Haniyeh was not sleeping under the ground, why he was not in an underground facility, so that he could not be attacked by Israel. And ditto Fuad Shukur in an apartment block in Dahia. Well, you know, why? Why was Fuad such a hero of the resistance movement? Why was he in an apartment block in Dahia in South Beirut? Why aren't these important leaders under the ground as the Vietnamese leaders were 60 years ago and more? Everything should be under the ground. All offices, all sleeping accommodation. These leaders are important to the struggle and should not be able to be killed, apparently, so easily as they are. Bobby's in London on Israel. On you go, Bobby.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. It was always nice talking to you. You are a wonderful gentleman. I remember you, George, when you took the truck in 2009 to Gaza. Nobody seems to know that. Yeah. And I thank you very much for that. The
Welcome.
things... I remember you know, exactly like that, you know. You have done a lot for the Palestinians. A lot. I remember since 1982, you know, and you're going to carry on to do a lot. And I tell you something, George. Palestine will be independent and not a single Jew will remain this. Because the state of Israel was like the state of France in Algeria. And after 132 years, where is the French? They are all gone. You know?
Well, that's true, but here's a point, Bobby, that you need to take into account. There were always Jews living in Palestine, side by side, peacefully, with the Christian population, then more than 15% of the Palestinian population. There were always Jews living there, with Christians and Muslims in amity, without difficulty, without problems. And I hope there will always be Jews living in Palestine. People whose religion has drawn them to the place. People who wish and are ready to share the land, the society, the political power in a democratic constitution where Christian, Jew, Muslim, men and women alike are all equal citizens under the law. Between the river and the sea. That's the Palestine I want to see and for which I fight. We are not against Jews. We must never be tempted down that road of being against Jews. We are against the nationalist ideology of Zionism. Bobby, thanks for your kind words about me. I cut you short only because my good wife is now right next to me. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, once again, things happen faster than we anticipate. Although you did announce it at the last show, big things are gonna happen. And so the poll in which we ask, has the Gaza war revealed the impotence of the United States?
United Nations.
United States.
Same thing.
It's a slip of, Freudian slip, because as Mark Hannaford says, I'm 56 and still have no idea what the UN does other than allow America to blame everybody else for the people it constantly kills. And Paul Vinogradov says the complicity as well, of just about every member state. I haven't heard anyone in France wearing a Je suis Gaza badge or T-shirt, for example.
No, not one.
If they are the mainstream
definitely not
media,
at the Olympics, you wouldn't get in.
No, you wouldn't. They would just studiously look the other way. The obscenity of Israel action here is off the scale. A shame Harold Pinter is no longer with us to excoriate this seemingly limitless atrocity. Quack Quack says something in your language. So I'll let you read it, okay? He says, unfortunately, it does, as well as illustrating the lack of involvement of the mass of people in its deciding making. So here he goes.
Well, this is from Robert Burns, the Scottish national poet. Oh, what some power the gift they gie us to see ourselves as others see us. It would frae money a blunder free us, and foolish notion. What airs and dresses and gait would lay us, and even devotion. Basically, if God would give us the power to see ourselves as others see us, how many blunders would it save us from? I'm glad to have been able to translate that.
Exactly. I wouldn't have liked to read those.
Our son could have read it flawlessly.
Yeah, he's very good at that.
He's a Burns fan.
So the big thing going on is obviously what you start with about Elon Musk meddling in this election in Venezuela. Why, for God's sake?
Anyone got a theory on that?
Well, Kevin Broom reminds us that at the last election, Richard Branson of Virgin, he organized a music show in support of Juan Guaido.
In Colombia, that's right.
Yeah, to open up the borders.
Juan Guaido, where is he when you need him?
Where is he when you need him?
Where's Richard Branson? he's as obscure a figure now as Juan Guaido.
But amongst others, I've seen Ratansi reports that Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has responded to Elon Musk's outrageous behavior.
He's threatened him to a fight, right?
Yeah, he's ready. He says, I'm ready. I'm a son of Bolivar and Chavez, and I'm not afraid of you. And God, do we know he's the son of Bolivar and Chavez? Because I was just going through the pictures of us 12 years ago in Bolivar, and it's all the same.
12 years
ago, the images that our friends Jackson Hinkle and the rest are sharing. And there's our friend who is a friend of the MOATS.
Augusto Montiel, Ambassador.
The same atmosphere we experienced 12 years ago, we see in the footage.
I look a lot younger then.
So the seas of people, the support. It's as you can see over here, long avenues all over Caracas and beyond, full supporters of then Hugo Chavez, but now as well Nicolas Maduro, both of the Bolivarian Revolution. The one I like so much is us with Jody McIntyre, who stood for the Workers' Party in Birmingham and defeated the sitting Labour member Jess Phillips by just a few hundreds.
Wow.
That was amazing, wasn't it?
Jody McIntyre, who stood for the workers in Birmingham, was in Venezuela with us amidst those crowds, and was also with me in Gaza with the convoy.
Yeah.
This man is a very considerable hero indeed. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, Gayatri. I'll take you for chips after the show, but I have to take a final call from RB in Canada on Israel and Iran. Go ahead, RB.
Thank you, George. I just wanted to quickly say that this is definitely an escalation by Israel. They are trying with all their might to draw the United States of America into an all-out war in the Middle East to target Iran. As you can see with Lloyd Austin saying that we will always back Iran, doesn't matter what Israel does to escalate it. This does not bode well for the future. I'm afraid for everyone involved. I don't know how Iran can possibly not retaliate for what's going on for this outrage, but I hope that they do it in such a way that doesn't broaden the conflict.
Well, I think the person who carried out the act of murder most foul will bear the responsibility for broadening the conflict, not the person who is responding to it. In terms of the culture of their Persian Gulf area, their religion, it is simply not possible not to retaliate, and seriously retaliate, with great vengeance retaliate, on the murder of a guest in your house. It's perhaps difficult for Westerners to fathom. It's not difficult for me because I know the region and the culture so very well. There is literally nothing that you could do more serious than murdering a guest in somebody else's home, because you have then made the host of that guest responsible for revenge if it takes 100 years and 3, 4, 5 generations. Revenge must be taken. And Israel knew that. That's why they did that, for the reason that you have just listed, that they want Iran to retaliate because they want a wider war, because they believe that the United States will rush into the war. I'm not so sure myself about that. It is an election period. I'm not so sure that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris want to go to the polls in November with an all-out Middle East war raging, but we'll see about that. You're right to quote Lloyd Austin, the black guy, as Joe Biden put it, that he appointed as the defense minister. He did say that, but he would say that, wouldn't he? He did not call on Iran and Israel to settle their differences because he knows that that cannot be done. Until the Israelis stop murdering Palestinian kids, Iran will continue to oppose them, as will the resistance in Yemen, the resistance in Iraq, the resistance in Lebanon, the resistance in Syria. They will continue to oppose with whatever might they can muster what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. So this is a circle that cannot be squared. So Austin was talking out of his backside, to be honest. The question is, for Joe Biden, for the Pentagon, and for the agencies, what will the consequences for their puppets in the region be if all-out war between Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran, what will the consequences be if there is an all-out war? Well, unless America intervenes, Israel will be defeated. If America intervenes, Israel may or may not still be defeated, but either way, when America intervenes, Russia will have no choice but to intervene, because Russia is already there. They just celebrated the 70th anniversary of their alliance with Syria. They will never break that alliance. They will never forsake it. It's a matter of historical significance and geographical and strategic significance also. Both China and Iran are close allies of Iran. And that's why I warned on Sunday that we were on the brink of all-out regional war with immense capability of sparking a much greater conflagration than that. I was right in what I warned you on Sunday. The news tomorrow or on Friday may make the prescience, the perspicaciousness of my prediction come even more vividly true. Either way, God willing, me and Gayatri will be back here on the Mother of All Talk shows on Sunday at 7 o'clock, same place and same time. Now I need you to support me on patreon.com/George Galloway. The daily dialogue between me and my patrons starts tomorrow with some new and very special content. Please, if you think I'm worth a cup of tea, join me.